On the night of July 15th, 2017, in a quiet Minneapolis neighborhood, a woman made a call to 911. The voice on the other end, Justine Damond, a 40-year-old white woman from Australia, dressed in her pajamas, no shoes or socks on, claiming she had heard what sounded like a woman being assaulted in the alley behind her home. Justine lived in a wealthy neighborhood and was engaged to be married. Her concern, or at least what she claimed was a concern, prompted her to dial emergency services not once but twice. But was this really an emergency? Was there a real threat? Or was this just another case of someone hearing noises and overreacting? What happened next would lead to one of the most controversial police shootings in the recent years. At 11:27 p.m., Justine called 911, saying she thought she had heard a woman in distress behind her house. Let's break this down. She didn't know if someone was being attacked or simply engaging in consensual sex. That's the kind of vague, unnecessary call that wastes emergency resources. In the state where I live, it is so common, and these kinds of calls have mostly been done by white women. If she truly believed someone was in danger, she should have had more clarity in her report. She would have maybe gone over to where the noise was coming from in order to see what was really going on. Instead, she calls back 8 minutes later, as if it was to make sure the police are actually going to show up for what might be nothing. A whole 8 minutes after the first call, she still isn't sure. She is wasting people's time. So what exactly was she expecting the police to do? She wasn't a witness to an actual crime. She just heard something that didn't sit right with her. Would she have even called if she lived in a less affluent area? Would she have called if she wasn't a privileged white woman who expected police to cater to her concerns, no matter how baseless and stupid they were? Minneapolis police officers Mohamed, Noor, and Matthew Harity were dispatched in response. They drove down the alley behind Justine's house. Their squad car's lights had been off. They saw nothing unusual. At 11:41 p.m., with no apparent crime in progress, they prepared to clear the scene. They had wasted their time, and there was nothing criminal going on in the area. That's when Justine Damond ran up to the driver's side of the car. This is another questionable moment. In what world does it seem like a good idea to run up to a police car at night after calling them about a potential crime? That is a real stupid action she did. She startled the officers in the vehicle, something that should have been common sense to avoid. Officer Noor, in the passenger seat, reacted in a split second. He pulled his gun and fired a single shot, striking Justine in the abdomen. She died within minutes. The shooting was immediate and tragic, but so was a series of events that led to it. Justine did something criminal, waste the emergency resources in her area. Justine Damond's death was treated very differently from many other police shootings. Unlike the many black and brown victims who struggled to get justice, this case was immediately taken seriously because Justine was white. Officer Mohamed Noor, a Somali American cop, was suspended from his job. Obviously, nothing was done with the other officer, Matthew Harity, because he was not directly involved with the shooting. Shortly after, Officer Noor was tied to a criminal probe within the state of Minnesota. St. Paul defense attorney Thomas Plunkett was then assigned to represent Noor. On March 20th, 2018, Noor was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. He surrendered with his attorney to the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office's headquarters in Minneapolis, and was afterwards booked into their jail. Before doing so, Noor resigned from his job. Then duty judge Todrick Barnett set his bail to $400,000. 2 days after his booking, the bail was posted, and Noor was released from jail for the time being. Then prosecuting attorney Amy Sweezy presented this case to a grand jury, leading to Noor being indicted on an extra charge of second-degree murder. After this new charge was filed, Noor had to appear in court once again, this time before another judge, Lydia Morales. In this hearing, he pleaded not guilty to the 3 crimes. No new bond amount was set, and Noor would remain out of custody. After several court dates, the charges were unable to be dismissed and no plea deal was reached. Then in April 2019, Mohamed Noor was put on trial at the Hennepin County District Court. On the 30th day of that month, the jury found him guilty of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, but not guilty of the last charge, second-degree murder. After the verdict was read, Noor's bail was revoked and he was returned to the Hennepin County Jail. Minnesota Judge Catherine Quintans denied him a new trial and planned to deliver one sentence for both charges in June of that year. Then on June 7, 2019, he was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. Noor was taken to the Oak Park Heights State Prison to serve his sentence. Due to Judge Quintans refusing to toss his conviction, Noor appealed his case, which reached Minnesota's Supreme Court. The Supreme Court initially denied him a new trial, but would then go on to overturn his third-degree murder conviction. However, the other manslaughter conviction would stand. Therefore, the case was sent over to the United States Supreme Court, but they as well refused to grant him a new trial nor toss the rest of his conviction out. However, there was still hope for Noor, as his more severe charge of third-degree murder was tossed. He would have to be resentenced. He returned to Judge Quintans' courtroom, and his sentence was reduced to 57 months. Then in June 2022, Noor completed the sentence and was released from prison. All other matters regarding his appeal are pending. Hopefully the Innocence Project takes it up and clears him. There was also a federal lawsuit filed by the Damond family's attorney, Robert Bennett, which sought $50 million for alleged civil rights violations that were committed against Justine. The suit targeted 5 defendants, Officer Mohamed Noor, Officer Matthew Harity, along with 2 chiefs, Jenny Hartiu, Medaria Arredondo, and the city of Minneapolis itself. This lawsuit was settled in May 2019 for $20 million, and due to the city hall settling this, none of the defendants needed an immediate attorney. Compare this to the cases of countless black men and women who are shot by police, where officers are rarely seen ending up inside of a courtroom, let alone a prison cell. The system worked differently this time, and it's impossible to ignore why. Justine was immediately painted as a victim because she was a white woman in pajamas. Her innocence was never questioned, and her decision to call 911 for a vague, unclear reason was never scrutinized the way it should have been. The entire situation was a mess from the start. Justine called 911 about a disturbance that she wasn't even sure was a crime. She approached a police car at night in an alley, creating a high-risk situation. Noor's reaction was excessive, but it was also a split-second decision based on poor circumstances. Would Justine Damond still be alive today if she had simply stayed inside and let the police do their job? Possibly. Would Officer Noor have been convicted if Justine wasn't white? Probably not. And it was a white cop shooting a black woman in the alley. Doubtful. This wasn't just a tragic police shooting, it was a case study in race, privilege, and over-reliance on police intervention for minor disturbances. Justine Damond is often remembered as an innocent victim, a woman who was just trying to help. But was she really? Her actions that night were reckless, her 911 call unnecessary, and her death, while tragic, was the result of multiple bad decisions. At the end of the day, this wasn't just about a police shooting. It was about privilege, race, and how one person's overreaction led to an irreversible tragedy. Now, I ask you listeners, if you ever have a small issue, someone who constantly messages you stuff that you don't want them to, or other small conflicts, do not call the police, just block the person, solve the issue yourself. That is what ridiculous white women have done in the recent years. Call the cops over stupid reasons. There are some minor criminal charges that should not even exist. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of Strawberry Inc. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Have a good rest of your day.